Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Before we start, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and you can always change your mind later. Alright, our first story today comes to us from Original Tank 5357. You want me to stay in my lane? You got it, boss. Let's jump right in. Some time ago, I used to work in a medical specialty office. It was ID or infectious disease, as a medical assistant. Sidebar, I used to work in the food industry and was always told that I wouldn't ever contribute to society or do anything meaningful with my life. While I absolutely loved working as a chef and a baker at the time, I wanted to do more with my life and prove to myself that I'm not as useless as people made me out to be. Not that I believe that for 1 second, but in my culture, if you aren't a businessman or a doctor, you're lower than everyone else. It's pretty terrible, but that's how the culture is. I now live in the US and it's been pretty good. Back to the story. I had graduated top 3 in my class and was certified through the AAMA and scored in the 90th percentile, so I knew my stuff. But I've never worked a white-collar job in my life. So I was afraid that I would seem out of place. I did my externship at this ID clinic in my town, and they loved my interpersonal skills. They loved my work and stated that I would be offered a job at the end of my externship. I was elated. I was so happy to have a job secured and have a foot in the door to the medical field. It turns out my blue-collar experience helped me relate with a lot of our patients, and they appreciated my work more for it. As my time went on, my experience working in the medical field became less about the money and more about the people I can help with my direct patient care. They weren't just charts, MRNs, medical record numbers for those non-medical folk, and diagnoses. They were Jeff, who ran the local farmer's market, or Meg, who worked with kids at the Y. I cared for my patients and our repeats would always look forward to coming back to see me and chat. I loved working with my patients. So at the end of my externship, I was extended an offer of employment for a decent amount of money. It was more than my other classmates were offered at their practices, but still not a whole lot. And I took it. I was to be the medical assistant in charge of direct patient care. This meant checking in, rooming, dealing with prescriptions, performing and searching for labs, packing wounds, and doing dressing changes. Being officially part of the office now, I was determined to work my butt off and show myself and my colleagues that I could do it. I continued to do my work and care for patients. However, over time, I would notice certain things that weren't in my job duties that I could do that would help care for the patients. Certain things like calling their doctors for updated orders or checking for records from local hospitals. Also, helping patients find good home health or SNFs, skilled nursing facilities, generally the medical scheduler's job. This also included looking into insurance coverage, billing, and checking referral statuses, referral coordinators, among other things. Doing these tasks meant a bit more work on my end, but also meant the best care that I could offer for my patients. This went on for a year, and my patients were happy and willing to come to appointments. Apparently, not a whole lot of people like to come to a building that has the words infectious diseases in big print on its side. Then, one day, out of the blue, I'm called into my supervisor. Young, naive me thought, oh great, they see how hard I'm working and I'm finally getting recognized. Maybe they'll promote me to lead. Nope. My boss, Shelly, told me that I'm working too hard and sticking my fingers into too many pots. I asked where this is coming from. She stated that I was staying more than 5 minutes late too many times, and it's because I'm doing too much work. She said, we can't keep paying you all this overtime. I think I was maybe making 30 minutes overtime at most. She said, that's still too much. I'm doing too much work. I was baffled, absolutely stunned. I thought I was doing the practice a service, but she undermined the entirety of the last year's hard work I put in. I was frustrated and a bit upset, but tried my best to remain professional. So I asked her what she would like me to do, and the next words out of her mouth were ones she would come to regret. Well, I see you're doing a lot of tasks that are meant for other positions. Maybe you should stop doing those and just stay in your lane. She then proceeded to write me up for trying to abuse the time clock. Insert Jim Carrey, alrighty then, and cue malicious compliance. I asked her to send me a list of exactly what my job duties are, which she was happy to do. It listed most of what I was originally meant to do, except it didn't include dressing changes and packing wounds. I saw this and immediately knew this would be trouble for my boss. You see, she was the only other medical assistant on our end of the office that was certified to deal with minor wound care and dressings. At that point, since I was the main contact for patients, that would fall onto her plate. So I told each of my patients that I won't be doing any of that extra work because it goes against the practice's wishes, and I was told not to. All of them understood, but it's tough to get patients to keep appointments when things are delayed. Not long after the order was issued, I got my first page for a wound pack. Excellent. One thing to note about my boss is that she absolutely abhors feet. And one thing to note about infectious disease clinics is that we dealt with a lot of diabetic foot infections, at least 2 or 3 a day. Doc wants to see how it's healing, so he removes the wrap and unpacks the foot. Spent a little extra time with the patient and now has to get to his next appointment. I'm paged by the doc to pack the foot wet to dry. No problem, doc, let me get Shelly for you. He gives me kind of an odd look, but continues to his next appointment. Shelly gloves up, and as soon as she passes the threshold of the room and notices it's a diabetic foot, is holding back her gags and immediately sweating. I pass by the room and she asks for my help. As calmly as I could, I turned and said, "Sorry boss, packing wounds isn't on my list. Can't do it, just staying in my lane. By the way, the 2 o'clock in 3 is a through and through foot infection. Probably should get that packed soon too." I'm glad we were wearing masks because she couldn't see the massive crap-eating grin I had on my face throughout that whole encounter. She tried to write me up about disobeying superiors, but I had spoken with my GM and she was behind me. Instead, she ended up getting written up for trying to put wound packs back on my list after she told me I did too much work. She ended up having to do part of the medical scheduler's job, part of the referral coordinator's job, and part of the billing office's job, as she had let go one of our front desk staff because there was not enough work to go around. There was plenty of work. I was doing it. She didn't last long after that. The burnout got to her and she stepped down from her supervisor position 4 months after that. They ended up hiring another super and I left the practice shortly after I got COVID. They told me to come back into work after 3 days and still very symptomatic, so I told them I wouldn't endanger my patients like that and to shove it. Last I heard, they have an entirely new front office staff and they're perpetually short-handed. Should have let me drive my own path instead of staying in your silly lanes. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called OpsChief0299. It says, "You are solid gold. You will find some place that appreciates you and lets you shine one day. As a business owner, trust me when I say, I have kissed a crap ton of frogs just to find a handful of princes." OP replied to this comment and said, "Thank you for your kind words. I don't feel like I'm any more special than the next guy. I just give a darn about the person who sits across from me, and it makes me all the better at my job." I can tell you from personal experience that in the medical field here in Ontario, Canada, there are quite a few people who don't give a rat's butt about the person that they're treating. People like OP seem to be the exception rather than the rule, and unfortunately that's really sad. I'm just gonna finish this story by saying thank you to OP and all the other medical professionals who actually care about their patients. You make going to the hospital or the doctor office a lot easier for people like me who have severe anxiety about those situations. Our next story today comes to us from CarltheWellEndowed. No, that is not a company spot. That is my spot. Let's jump right in. When I started at my new company, we had used all assigned parking spots in the adjacent parking garage, and I was given a spot in a building a couple of blocks away. When I got in early one morning and had to be let in by security as the building was not yet unlocked, I talked with the security guard briefly, and this started a bit of a friendship. After a week or so, he asked why I always came through the front door instead of through the parking garage, and I explained my situation. He ended up giving me one of the extra spots that was assigned to the security staff. I was only allowed to park there Monday to Thursday as they needed the spot for cleaning crews on Friday. This spot is only about 20 feet from the pedestrian bridge to the building, so it is a pretty nice setup. We also have 2 company visitor spots in the same adjacent lot. However, they are on the top floor, along with the rest of the spots assigned to our company, exposed to the sun and require walking down 3 flights to get to the pedestrian bridge. We have had a senior engineer visiting from a different office for the last 2 weeks, parking in the visitor spot. On Tuesday, we went to our cars together, and he saw where I was parked. Well, when I got to work yesterday, he was already in my parking spot. I headed up to one of the visitor spots and let him know that he needed to move his vehicle out of my spot, or his car might be towed. We are right downtown and have many people who park in this garage without permission. He told me that it was fine, don't worry about it, it was a company parking spot, and that I could just stay in the visitor spot. I told him that I really did not think that was a good idea and tried to explain, but he brushed me off. I followed up with an email letting him know that the spot was not leased by our company, but that I just had permission to park there until a spot opened in the garage. I parked in my assigned spot in the other parking garage. Bossman does not like non-visitors parking in the visitor spot, so I was not about to stay there and didn't worry about it just like I was told. Well, come lunchtime, senior engineer comes storming back into the office. Apparently, security guards saw that the vehicle parked in my spot was not my crappy Civic, but rather a Tesla, and decided to have the vehicle towed. Not exactly sure what came of this, and I bet I will find out later today, but I am happy that I sent the CYA email, as senior engineer outranks me by a considerable margin. And I do not need someone thinking that I left him high and dry out of spite. I should note that while we have spots assigned to our company, each vehicle gets assigned its own spot. Occasionally, we will have people park in our assigned spots, and security will call our office to confirm if this is someone we are allowing to park there, or if this is someone parking improperly. So if it had been a company spot, senior engineer's assumption would have been correct. We got no such call, and security guard does not have my personal number. Update to the story, not the satisfying update I was hoping for at all. Apparently, senior engineer called and complained to building management. He explained the situation, and it turns out that security did not have the authority to allow me to park in this spot. Sounds like security guard got chewed out, and I am really hoping this did not impact his job. I lost my parking in the close garage. Bossman is not upset with me, which is the only good thing about this. Senior engineer was bitching to anyone who would listen. He is such a victim. No idea who had to pay the tow fees, but I'm pretty confident that senior engineer did not. Update number 2, I was able to speak with security guard on my way to lunch today. Apparently, his boss did not chew him out, and I guess that was passed on to senior douchebag to appease him. Yes, security guard was told that he could not give out the spot, but that was it. He was quite surprised when I told him what I had heard. Yeah, those updates weren't all that great, but unfortunately, it's pretty much what we saw coming. One idiot comes in and just screws up everything, especially when there's somebody in a much higher position. The only real repercussions for the visiting boss man was that the car got towed. It was just a mild inconvenience. I know eventually the boss man's going to get what's coming to him because I firmly believe in karma, and he's been dealing out enough crap that it's definitely going to fall on his head at some point. Our last story today comes to us from DepartmentKiller. If you find that job, take it, goodbye. Okay, I will, and take the department with me. Let's jump right in. To keep it vague, my old company is a fairly large real estate investment trust, roughly $10 billion. I was a part of a very niche M&A shop that was typically always the black sheep of the company. It felt like anything we did was just a hassle overall, and wasn't really worth the company's time to entertain these acquisitions anymore. I was a part of the minuscule-sized deal team, 3 of us, including myself, that closed over 60 deals per year with 45 to 50 active deals at one time. Typically, each deal took about 4 to 9 months from start to finish, depending on the seller's competence level and organization. This was my first job out of college. I knew the career path I wanted to take was going to be long hours and no vacations, but typically in finance, the salary will reflect that commitment. Well, for this job, I was making $52,000 per year, working 80-hour weeks, $12.50 an hour gross pay. After my first full year, I requested a 20% raise with the VP of the department. I was told the basic inflation spiel and got a 2% cost of living adjustment. I think it's important to note here that after I left this company, I found out the same VP received a $2 million bonus. Fast forwarding a couple of months, every year, the company has a meeting where the entire company, 300-ish people, meets at a hotel. They do this to give updates on what the company has done so far, where they are going, and for team building, of course. In reality, this was a multi-million-dollar event to pat the backs of the executives that really don't do much in reality. A part of this event, anyone in the company is allowed to send in anonymized questions to the CEO, and he will read and respond to it if he thinks it's something worth talking about. Just before this company event, 5 people had resigned from other departments in the company, all of which almost doubled their salaries. So I decided to ask the question, how do you plan to retain talent when there are other companies offering 2 times the money with half of the workload? The CEO decided this question was hilarious and read it aloud, laughing, and responded, "If you find that job," with finger quotes as if it wasn't real, "you'd better take it. Goodbye." After being treated pretty terribly the last 1.5 years, including missing my grandfather's 88th birthday party due to a last-second PowerPoint that ended up not even being used, I decided that was the final nail in the coffin. I spoke with one of the recently resigned coworkers about his new company, and soon after, a recruiter from his company reached out to me. I go through the interview process and get the job. I more than doubled my pay when taking the 20% end of year bonus into account. I even got a $10,000 signing bonus. The story doesn't end here. As I gave notice to my wonderful manager who taught me everything I know, she first tells me she hates me because she is going to have to take over my 19 current deals. But then, shockingly, she confides that after 7 years of working at the company, she is ready to move to greener pastures as well. I decided to call the recruiter that reached out to me originally and ask if there are any other positions open at my new company. She says yes, they interview her, and she gets the job as well a month later. 2 down, 1 to go. The final coworker standing was not hard to convince as he saw 52 deals suddenly pile onto his desk while he was already underwater doing the same 80-hour weeks I did. I worked with him to spruce up his resume and get the wheels turning. After 2 interviews, he was given a verbal job offer with an in-writing letter expected next week. All said and done, all 3 of us ended up doubling our old salaries. The old company is now scrambling to replace us with over $100 million worth of deals that will grind to a halt when my last coworker makes his departure. My new gig does not feel like real life. I have a fantastic boss that respects my time outside of the office to the point that he gave me 2 weeks in between jobs to unwind after my previous role. My workload is 30% of what I used to do as well. My old manager got the same 2-week treatment and is currently enjoying her time off and will start in the middle of October. If I was only given that 20% raise. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Kagato87. It's an email to the CEO that says, "Hey CEO, I just wanted to thank you for that rousing speech at the last get-together. It really motivated me and I doubled my salary. Thanks. CC to the board, shareholders, oops, didn't mean all staff." From a lot of these stories that we read, it seems like higher-ups really don't have a grasp on what's going on below them in a company. In this case, it would have cost them tens of thousands of dollars to give some raises to the 3 people who were doing that job, to bring them up so that they were getting paid the right amount for the time that they were putting in. But that CEO who just told them to go and get more money somewhere else, well, you had to expect that they were going to leave. And now, those couple tens of thousands of dollars are delaying your company from $100 million in contracts. Wow. Check out all 3 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.